If I could do roll call, please. Kathleen Allen, Tom Chiappa.
Here.
Heather Del Conte here. Pam Dowd.
Here.
Lisa Glidden.
Here.
Jen McKenzie.
Here.
Linda Servino.
Here.
And Zeta Olson. Okay, now if I could get a motion to move to executive for the purposes of reviewing the performance of a particular personnel.
So moved.
Okay, who was that, Pam? And a second?
It was Linda.
Oh, it was Linda, okay. And a second?
I can second it.
All right, Lisa? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Excellent, all right, so I'll see you back on the other one.
I don't see Tom. Oh, there you are.
I think wait, 1, 2, 3, 4. I think I see everyone. All right, I need a motion to rejoin our regular meeting.
I'll make the motion.
A second.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, well, welcome back to our regular meeting. And I guess we start here with the policy approval. So we need a first and a second to approve the motion to review and approve the second and final reading of the board policies listed below. Has everybody had a chance to review these policies and take a second reading of them? Okay, then can I get, first, before we get our first and second, Nancy, are you being our secretary? Thank you so much. I appreciate that. It's not my forte. Do we have a first for this motion?
I'll move it.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. A second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Pam. Is there any discussion about these policies or this resolution? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Okay. I guess we are now going to pass it along to Dr. Calvin for his presentation.
Good evening, board. Great to see everybody back on today. And we're going to just jump right into the presentation here. Okay, Matt, can you just move ahead? We have just a couple of things I'd like to share with you all this evening. First, I'd like to start by highlighting a number of our high school students who were recently celebrated. We had 31 new students who were inducted to the Untitled Chapter of the National Honor Society. There was an event that recently occurred. Event was well planned out. Certainly would like to give kudos to the staff, Kaylee Morris, and all the staff members who worked together to make sure that the ceremony was a very big success. And this year's inductees, we have again 31 of them. I won't read all of their names, but certainly all of those students were very proud of you. We want to congratulate you, and again, we want to thank our high school for the job that was well done. The ceremony has been videotaped and recorded, so anyone who wants to go back and watch it again, it is on the YouTube page through WBUC. Okay, go ahead, Matt. In terms of some updates, just a couple of things. I want to let you know that our emergency project is now moving forward. There was some trucks and folks out there today kind of making sure everything's good to get moving. So that is moving ahead, and we expect that over the next 30 days or so, we'll be pretty much halfway, if not almost done with the project. As we kind of move forward with it, we will continue to provide updates to the board. In terms of graduation and some of the other senior events, we have recently put out notes to parents and let them know the dates of graduation. And board, certainly, what we're looking at right now is about maybe two ceremonies. There will be at least up to 500 people who can attend. That is aside from our students, the numbers of students. And we are looking to have a very safe, socially distanced graduation ceremony. Probably 2 of them is what we're looking at this point in time. We have a rain date that's also been sent out to parents. And board members, we'd love to have you all join us. Anyone who wishes to come, we'll have space for you for sure. And we're just looking forward to a great day to celebrate our students. And also our parents too, who really worked hard as well. So we're just looking forward to the graduation. We are now working on spectators at outdoor events. So we're looking at possibly an increase in the number of people who can attend our events. So right now, there's been some regulations that have been been loosened up, basically. So now what they're saying from the state of New York is the athletic associations that we can have up to 500 people at outdoor events. So if you recall from the past year, last month or so, we had to, yes, the state said you can do it, but there was a local plan that was needed that had to be turned into our county. As of right now, we've not heard much from the county, except for they've heard, like we've heard, you can have up to 500 people. At this point in time, we are working on a plan to kind of get some additional people to help us with, bringing people in, doing the screening, making sure that people are socially distancing. We do believe that we'll be able to offer more with respect to the spectators. I'm just looking for a little bit more guidance. I think by tomorrow, we'll have some additional information out to the public. Our goal is to try to make sure that we provide opportunities for more spectators, but at the same time, making sure we do it safely and that we have enough staff to cover what needs to be done there. I don't think that at any of our events that we're going to have 500 people. I think we'll definitely have less, so I think we'll be okay with adding some additional spectators. Pam, did you have a question there?
I just wanted to make sure that the public is aware, although it's been put out, there are 2 spectators per every athlete, both our home team and any of the visitors are allowed. Currently, the 2 spectators per athlete are still able to attend.
That is correct. Yes, we did put a note out about that, and yes, that is what's happening right now. And we are all, and when I say all of the districts are certainly all trying to figure this out. There are 8 out of the 9 of us who have already kind of just said we're holding status quo until we know what the next steps are in terms of what we need to do. And I think everybody's trying to make sure we have the proper supports in place. Okay. I just shared a little bit about our capital project, but I'll also just let you know that we are continuing to now work on the capital project in terms of phase 3. We are working with our middle school staff to figure out all of the kinks and all the things that we'd like to do. And board will be bringing things back to the capital project committee and also to the board at our next meeting. We'll share a more in-depth report around capital project. And I'd just like to say, lastly, that we've been working very diligently on the high school principal search. We have, I think we're pretty much at the end of this search. We have identified 2 candidates. We're kind of at the end of the list here. And I would like to say that I think things have been going pretty well. We had about 58 different people who entered the search, and we had a high number of principals, 8 principals. We had an assistant/executive director, and we've also had a number of superintendents who've been a part of this search. So we've had a lot of people who've been in the search process, and so I expect to soon bring a candidate back before the board. Okay, Matt, go ahead. All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about K through 12 summer school programming. We want to make sure that the community does understand, as a follow-up from our last meeting, that the district will be offering the following summer school programs. We're going to have a K through 5 program for elementary students. We're going to have a 6 through 8 program with the middle school. Now, normally middle school has only 7 and 8, but we know that there's some kids who need to make some transitions to the middle school. So we have a lot of space in the middle school over the summer. We thought that we tried to bring grade 6 that are going to be transferring over to that place, to the middle school. And our goal is to make the transition a little bit easier. There are a couple kids that we believe certainly that would be a real plus for. And then we'll have a 9 through 12 credit recovery / academic supportive program at the high school. And we also have an extended school year program for our students with disabilities. So just to talk about the dates, start and end times and locations, I'm going to now turn this over a little bit to Carrie and Heidi to kind of go through those pieces for us.
Good evening. So the dates are for the extended school year program, July 5th through August 13th, and our K-12 programs, both the elementary, middle, and high school, will be from July 8th to August 18th, ensuring we all have 30 days of time at summer school. Our start and end times, we're still working out the logistics of that because we are not really narrowed down the students that would be participating and getting the bus route and ensuring that we have proper safety and social distancing on buses. So we're really looking at what will the bus routes look like to nail down our start and end times. Right now, the elementary is definitely going to start at 8:15 and end at 11:45. Our locations, the elementary programming will be at Charles E. Riley. The middle school will have obviously the middle school program with the 6 through 8, and the high school will have the high school students.
Okay.
Go ahead,
Next
Matt.
slide.
Go to the next slide. We crafted the summer school program really around a couple of goals. One, to support students to recover from any learning losses, help bridge those gaps that may still exist, and also to support students who need the credit recovery and or to earn the Regents exemptions. So as Carrie mentioned, we have a program that will run 5 days a week for 30 days. It's a half-day program, as she mentioned, and we are focusing both on ELA and math K-8, as well as credit recovery in grades 9 through 12. Our plan and hope is to keep our class sizes relatively small in order to increase both personalized contact with students and make sure that we meet all of the health and safety guidelines. Breakfast and lunch will be provided to all participants at no charge, and we will offer a remote learning option per the New York State guidelines. Students are being recommended based on a variety of data points and outcomes from this school year, and we will review and track the student progress throughout the summer to gauge where we were successful and where we would need to make adjustments. Go ahead, Matt. In terms of where we are for next steps, we are well underway in the hiring process, both for our administrative and support teams and our faculty and staff. Carrie and I had the first of our large group meetings this week with a variety of other departments, food service, transportation, buildings and grounds, and we'll continue having various weekly meetings until we get to the kickoff. And folks will be communicating with students and families over the next couple of weeks. We're finalizing those letters that will go out, introducing the program and inviting students to participate.
Okay. Any questions from the board before we move on? Tom?
Yeah, I just had a question regarding the data points that we'd be utilizing to do the assessment of learning loss. And then also, are we collaborating? Is it a collaborative effort outside of just the data? What other information are we using to make that assessment?
Sure. Carrie? And
At the elementary level, we're looking at different data that we have, data points such as STAR, DIBELS, or DIBELS that I've had shown you through different meetings. But we're also taking teacher recommendation, looking at attendance. So the teachers are really the ones that are putting forth the student names, the report cards, how they performed on report cards and how they performed in the classroom. So a lot of data is being drawn from the teachers.
Yes. At the secondary level, go ahead, Heidi. You want to say something?
Very similarly, our 6, 7, and 8 kiddos will have those similar data points that Carrie just mentioned, teacher recommendation, counselor recommendation, any credit recovery, again, with a focus on ELA and math. Once we get to the high school, that will really be both 9th grade at risk, as well as 9 through 12 class recovery, course recovery. So in order to qualify for the Regents exemption, they have to have a passing course grade by the end of August.
So STAR data, ORF data, pass and fail data at the, especially at the secondary level. And to answer your question, Tom, yes, this is being done collaboratively. We're certainly getting feedback from our staff, our teachers, our administrators, and that's how we are working diligently to make sure that we create class lists in the program that's moving forward. And there will be assessments, pre-assessments and post-assessments to see really how well, where the kids start in the program and then how they end, to measure the work that we're doing, right? You're on mute there, sir.
Yeah, I have one more question, Mathis, about relative to parents that may want to have their kids in there that wouldn't be necessarily learning loss, but would still want to continue on. Do we have anything for those kids as well?
Yeah, so we'll certainly work with parents. We'll kind of see, who certainly is interested. Our first level, though, that we want to try to make sure we get to are those kids who definitely need the extra help and support. So we'll start there with those kids, and then we'll go from there to the others, right? Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Yes. Linda, did you have a question?
Yes, I wanted to thank you for getting this started. I know I had talked about it a few months ago, and I am so excited that these kids that need the time will be getting it. So thank you for rolling this out.
Absolutely. No. Thank you. Yes, no problem. Any other questions at all from the board? Okay, Matt, go right ahead. All right, that's all that I have this evening. Matt, you can go to the next screen there. Thank you. We're all set.
Okay, I think the next thing on the agenda is our long-awaited conversation about equity, which, just to give a little background, was supposed to be a training actually moderated by, we were hoping someone from SUNY Oswego, and that just didn't come together. in the time that we really needed it to. So as a board, we decided to move forward with at least just having an introductory conversation in public, because I think as we talk about equity, equality, and all of those words, there's a little confusion about what we mean. I know we get feedback from folks that definitely reflect a little confusion. So it's not really a presentation. This conversation is really meant to kind of open that discussion up, not just as a board, but also to the community. So let's start the discussion. Matt, could you go to the next slide? Thanks. Because I am the lucky one to get to lead this discussion, I thought I'd take liberties and just give a little background about why the equity piece is so important to me personally. I know you all share that passion. But basically for me, I lived growing up for 2 years in New Delhi, India. And I remember in 6th grade riding on an embassy bus to an embassy school, a beautiful embassy school filled with flowers and everything else, and outdoor. It was like a gorgeous campus. But out the window of my bus, I passed girls my same age who were begging on the streets. And so in 6th grade, I started thinking, what did I do to deserve this seat on the bus going to an embassy school? And what did they do wrong that they were having to beg on the streets for food? And, over time, obviously, I've come to realize, it just kind of, I guess, depends on your perspective in terms of God and fate and all those things. But really, we don't earn the place we were born. We don't earn that. It's given to us. And so that's where everything starts. And so for me, that's, I guess, where the seeds of this conflict and kind of this perspective started to bloom. Then, growing up and then becoming an adult and getting involved in the school board here locally, I guess I also started to see things here in the school district, areas where we might need to tweak and improve to make sure that, there's equal access for all kids. So that's kind of the local context. And now's a perfect time to be talking about it because you cannot turn on your news without hearing about equity in terms of the national context. So it's really a really opportune time for us to address this here locally. Matt? Thank you. So I actually hate being read to, so I'll just give a moment to people to read this wonderful quote. Okay, Matt? All right. I'm sure a lot of you are very familiar with this schematic, and we'll stop and have a little discussion after I just kind of introduce it a little bit. But basically, have you guys all nod if you've seen this before? Yeah, it's pretty common it's a great visual for really describing the difference between equality, equity, and justice. And so just as a premise, obviously we're not talking about social justice or social welfare or any of those like more global terms, more community terms in terms of this conversation. We are specifically talking about public education as the institution that we're working with. So for this schematic, really the tree is the public education system and institution. So obviously in the first picture, you have the student who's riding the bus, to the embassy school, and then the one who's begging on the streets. And that's kind of an extreme example, but you get the idea. You have, kids coming to our school with resources, with network, with all of the supports. And then you have children coming into the same buildings, with the same teachers, the same resources, but they're coming from backgrounds that are different or with needs that are different. And it gives them less of an edge in terms of grabbing onto that fruit. So that's inequality, obviously. Equality, again, everyone has the same textbooks. Everyone's allowed to go out for the football team. Everyone's allowed to go out for, the play. Everyone's allowed to do this. But the reality is those kids with resources, with support behind them, they have a little easier access to the fruits, whereas those kids who may not have transportation or may come from a home of crisis, for them, accessing those fruits is just going to be a little bit more difficult for them, even though they have been given the same resources. So that's equality. Equity, there are things we definitely do well in this district when it comes to equity. For instance, if we have kids with special needs, they may get the one-on-one aid. The equity is really about giving those kids who need a little bit more. If you have the kid in crisis coming into the school, you give them a little time to settle in before you expect anything of them, or transportation to an athletic event for the kids without transportation. We can do better on that. But you see those, you give those kids who come from backgrounds that may have different needs. I hate to use the word deficit, but potentially, and you give them just a little more so that everyone's now accessing the fruits. The problem is what we really want to do is peel back the layers and really kind of right the tree so that everybody who walks into the doors of our schools, whether it be kindergarten, first, second, middle school, high school, they all come in and they realize that they can access those fruits equally. And to do that, we really have to right our tree. We really have to peel back our cultural layers, our policy layers, all of those things, and really fix the tree, fix how we do things so that that is the result. So they use the term justice. I don't know really what term to use. I like using the term equity just because I think a blending of those two things is really what we're looking to do. Does anyone have anything to add to this schematic, this visual?
I would just add, I realize the term social justice has some political connotations right now, but that term is over 100 years old and actually has a very long philosophical, like the term justice has a philosophical base to it that is actually a little bit different from equity, right? Because in the picture where they're both finally able to reach the tree, because the tree is crooked, it doesn't make a difference. Right. It's still one who's going to have less. So, maybe just kind of like, as you say, like peeling away the layers of like whatever political connotations right now, justice is something that has a very long, like thousands of year old legal tradition.
Right. And I appreciate that addition, Lisa, because what I don't want people thinking is that justice is somehow connected to our justice system. You know what I mean? The courts, and especially given the context right now. So I really appreciate that, Lisa. Anyone else have anything to add? Would you agree, Lisa, though, that we're looking to really to do that piece, but it may still require equity, that, it's a blending of the two?
Yeah, definitely. Yes.
Okay. Excellent. All right. Thank you, Matt. Okay. So forgive me this, but community hoarding is really a term I coined, and I don't know if anyone else has used it before me. But it really, as I have been in church, as I have been in schools, as I have been in these, community organizations and really felt a sense of belonging and being there, and you realize how important that is to be a part of your community. But then you realize there are people who, yes, they have their own community, but when it comes to the school district, may or may not feel a part of that piece of community. And because I think we can all agree that the school is really central to a community at large, it's really important that we get it right in our school community to make everyone feel that sense of belonging, kids and families, if we want our whole community to also extend that piece. So community hoarding to me is when culturally and institutionally reinforced segregation that results in a select group of people inside like the big community or even like a school district benefiting from activities, resources, and opportunity that allow them to participate as vested and accepted members of the whole. The contrary is also true in community hoarding, that a segment or several segments of the community are systematically excluded from meaningful participation and acceptance, often based on factors outside their control. Does anyone have anything to add to this concept? Since I sort of made it up, but to me, it really works.
I just want to say I love that concept, and I'm totally going to borrow it. There's a very large literature that in like social capital and civic engagement that this hits the nail on the head, but I don't know that anyone else has ever come up with it. So if I use it, I'll totally cite you.
Oh, excellent. Thank you.
It is perfect. I love it. And it happens all the time here. It's currently happening with our own juniors and senior class.
So Pam, hold on to that because I would like to talk a little bit about specifics in just, I think, like 2 slides, just so I'll just kind of run through the next 2 slides, doing what I said I hate and just reading. That's the part of the discussion I really want to get to. So thank you, Matt. I think you fell asleep. Oh, no, there he is. Okay. So some things we can definitely agree on, which is a good place to start. 1, public schools are publicly funded. Therefore, opportunities should be available without barriers for all students. Number 2, positive educational outcomes for all students benefit our entire community. Number 3, in the Oswego City School District, there is tremendous diversity. Now, this is something I think we really haven't embraced. We do have an increasing number of actual, I hate to use the word racial, but ethnic diversity, like that is increasing. We have more ELL learners and that kind of a thing. But our socioeconomic diversity has always been there as well. And that is something I think we also need to celebrate because it's there, and those are also cultural in terms of being diverse. So where there's diversity, there is universal potential for growth. If any time you guys disagree with any of these, just shake your head because obviously we've got to swipe them off the list because we don't all agree on them. No one controls the situation in which they are born, but everyone has inherent ability to live a fulfilling life. Public schools are a microcosm of the greater community. Sustainable change is difficult and may require sacrifice, but long-term benefits far outweigh anything that is relinquished. People may or may not agree on that one. It's definitely something that I feel strongly about, but perhaps that shouldn't have been on that particular slide. Public schools for many are the only place they are exposed to their true potential, so school leadership has to get that right. I think I believe that very, very strongly. I went to the legislature thinking I could make a difference there, and I'm back here because this is where we have to get it right. Thank you, Matt. Okay, some guiding principles, and I pulled these off of just reading case studies and different research studies that have been done in this arena, and these are kind of just like take-home principles. The first is that individual programs do not affect sustainable change, and although they may offer promising short-term benefits, will not result in like lasting effect. You really can't slap programs on top of a system that's already going wrong, or that is, the crooked tree. You don't slap programs on top. You really have to do something inside out. Meaningful change starts with honest cultural reflection, which I think is difficult if you're sitting in the culture. Positive educational outcomes for all students has a direct impact on our local economy and community well-being. And I think at a time when we're trying to revitalize Oswego, the city of Oswego, we've gotten DRI money and we're doing all this great stuff. We really need to focus on this because it really does have, if we have successful students, all of them successful, it's going to impact everyone to the good. And then one thing that the studies brought out is that heterogeneous, diverse student bodies have an advantage. So we know we have that, so we need to capitalize on that. We know we have a heterogeneous, diverse student body. So there is a way to leverage that for everyone's success. Does anyone have any comments on those take-home principles? Or, Lisa, I know you've done this professionally for a while. Are there other things you'd like to add?
I would just add on the previous slide when you said that diversity means that there's universal potential for growth. There's also, like it's been shown in any number of different contexts, that diversity also leads to stronger resilience. Yeah, that's all I had to add for now. And I think Tom had his hand up.
Tom. Oh, and so does Linda. Wow. Okay. Tom and then Linda.
Yeah, I just want to say this dovetails perfectly into the strategic planning, or as an element of the strategic planning in defining our core beliefs. And it's really, I appreciate it, Heather, because it speaks to that. But I also want to say we don't work in isolation, that not only what we do inside and in the district, it has to go outside. And we have to work with all of our partners within the community, so that we're working together on this. Because you're right, the programs won't change it, and we have to go. I had mentioned this in a book that I was reading to Mathis the other day called Upstream, and it's like, oh, the program is a downstream technique. The upstream is we have to go farther upstream to be able to affect the change and see where we can really engage, even pre-K, before that, with the communities, with the neighborhoods, with all the services within those, and that we're all working together toward that goal. But this works perfectly into that, and will, I think, fit right into that core belief section.
Yeah, and I absolutely love that, and I really hope that this conversation does, mesh with the strategic plan, and then of course, I'm really hoping that it branches out into the larger community as well. Okay, thank you, Matt. All right, so now's the time to talk about our specific examples. And I just listed a few, divided it up, cultural, institutional, verbiage, and of course there's other examples as well. I think the biggest example, not maybe the most profound example, certainly not, but definitely I think the one that was stood out for me the most as an aha moment with my own kids was the athletic piece. And just that, our very first experience with competitive athletics, my daughter went out for modified volleyball. 80 girls went out for modified volleyball. 80 girls in a county known for their obesity rate. We rate the highest in New York State, at least we did when I was on the legislature, for obesity. And you have 80 girls wanting to be active at a young age and, instill that piece into their life. And yet we all know the end of this story, right? Only, I think 15 girls made the team. And, where I'm not a proponent of everyone getting trophies, I definitely am a proponent for making sure that every kid kind of comes in with the ability to make a team. And so that there's other sports, for instance, where there's a lot of feeder programs. And if you don't have enough money for the feeder programs, you aren't even making the modified team. So the deck is already stacked against you when you come in seventh grade. And so I have had parents come up to me and say, the best thing that ever happened to my child, to Joey or whatever, was that they got cut from that team because that opened up the door over here for them to go out for the theater. And my answer to them is, that's fantastic for Joey. But there is a Johnny out there for whom that rejection meant something, and they're never putting themselves out there again because that closed that door for them. And they didn't, and they, those 80 girls, I knew a lot of them. Some of them went out just to have that. They know that the ticket into belonging is to get on an athletic team, to get on, band, to get in a play, something like that. You have to be included if you want to belong. And athletics is really kind of that automatic ticket, right? If you're on a team. So I feel like there's some lost opportunity there, definitely. And people have talked about intramural programs, but I will tell you, there is a real resistance to intramural programs at the modified level, especially if it means an exception of competitive intramurals. And I'm not exactly sure what the answer is, but I'm just saying, I think peeling back one layer, there's something to be done there. And it's just an example. Another thing, when I was on the board, I started becoming overwhelmed with these expensive trips that our kids were going on. I'm talking, the senior trip especially got me. And I know I'm going to get some enemies here, but this is not new to people who have heard me talk about the expensive senior trip. If you have a child who has made it to their senior year and through all odds, and then all of a sudden, the celebratory event is to go to Disney World. And don't worry, it's equal because everyone can go out and fundraise, right? But your network, your social network, is not a place that you can knock on a door and ask for any money. That is a closed door for you. And so what is the message? That, and traditionally, Pam, you can correct me on this, but I think a quarter to a third of our graduating class goes to Florida. So you sit and wonder, like, why? And I have had people say, well, you know, Johnny would never have gone to Disney World if it wasn't for this opportunity. But I'm thinking what Johnny's parents could have done with the $1,500 that Johnny raised, you know? So, and just that there's so many other ways to celebrate our kids in an equitable way. But there are several examples of those very expensive trips that I think are exclusive. Just some things just to throw out there, you know, obviously class rank. I don't know if we need it or not. The tracking students. I think it's illegal. Mathis, you can nod if that's true or not, but I do believe there is an element of that maybe undercurrent in our culture. Starting in middle school, I think you can kind of identify who's going to be put into the advanced classes and who's not in middle school. And the problem is you go to high school then and people say, anyone can be a part of the advanced classes. Well, if you didn't have the advantage of the advanced classes in middle school, first of all, you're not confident in yourself and, you know, to do those. And secondly, you're a step behind. So I definitely think that there's an issue there, along with our conversations about higher education versus vocational training. You know, how we talk about those things definitely matters. And then verbiage, and then I will shut up and let other people give examples or just give some input. When you say things like let's say at a freshman orientation, if you can't handle advanced classes, you can always move back down. All of a sudden you're setting up a hierarchy. It's better to do the advanced classes and it's not as good to do the, you know, the standard regular Regents classes. I don't think that's the message we want to give. Or as a student's coming up to receive a scholarship, I don't personally think it's appropriate to mention that proving financial need was part of the qualification. I just feel like that objectifies the student and makes them, it's like the walk of shame down to pick it up, you know? And those are real examples. So, okay, your turn. Pam, you already talked about an example you wanted to bring up.
I did. I don't know if I could do it without crying. Yeah. Let's talk about the prom. Let's throw it right out there. The original tradition of the prom, however many moons ago, far before probably any of us were in school, that was a gift from the juniors, from the junior class to the senior class. That was way back in the 1920s when they did. That's what the spirit of the prom was. Not for a bunch of friends to just get together and get dressed up. We've had a whaling year. And while I can understand and certainly feel the frustrations, it's rather disappointing for someone to hold a private event that excludes many, many of our seniors who've missed junior year and senior year, but also excludes many of our juniors because of it was a limited number and it's by invitation. And that whole thing that whole event just fractures the whole meaning of the prom, number one, but the whole meaning of a class to gather together. It's a class. It's not a select group of people. We have to stop this thinking. We have to get off this wheel because it's not the right kind of wheel to be on. It was so disappointing that that's the route people chose. Again, I get their frustrations, but it just proves that we are going in the wrong direction. And we as the public school, we're the ones that make the change. Right in UPK, we need to start making the changes.
Thank you, Pam. And I think that also speaks to what Tom was speaking about too, is, you know, just really having this reflected in our greater community, because, you know, we're at this moment in time, we can't really control what people do privately, and we wouldn't want to, obviously. The fact that it happened and hurt so many of our students definitely says something about our I don't want to say everybody, I don't want to generalize, but at least about some beliefs that, you know, that it doesn't matter. Are there other people? Jim, I know, did you have anything to add about, I know you've had some athletic experiences.
Yeah, well, you and I have talked about athletics, and I talked to the board for years before I joined the board about kind of what you talked about with the modifieds. You know, the fact that it's so well known that physical activity and mental health are related to one another, that, you know, the educational aspects that we need to focus on are tied to our students being happy and healthy. And the more we can involve them in physical activity if they want it, and again, I agree, maybe you go out for the arts, you go out for the music, you go out for theater, and these are all wonderful social things, and they get you up and they get you moving and doing things. But there are people who also want to do athletics. And there are a lot of students at the middle school level who are not able to because of the limited resources. And I would never advocate for getting rid of interscholastic and us competing against other schools, but I think there could be trade-offs about how we approach that, particularly at the middle school level. You know, if we have two modified basketball teams, do we need to send them both on these away matches, or do we have one modified that does that, and then 2 or 3 intramurals where they can all compete within their group, so they still get activity, they still get a competitive nature? And I don't know what the right answer is, but I think it is something that is worth discussing. And I think it's even worth discussing bringing it down to, you know, the K through 6 levels and seeing how we can increase more of their physical activity. Because just like I've talked about before with our student academic achievement, I strongly feel on an academic and on a physical health that if we don't get students involved in that K through 3 or K through 4, then we're more likely to lose them long term. And so, you know, and I don't know where the right answers are, but I would love to be involved in those kind of conversations. So we have talked about the athletics. I will say also, you know, I understand the academic achievement aspect, you know, in some of the verbiage. I'm involved with sometimes helping select a student award that is for financial need. And, you know, it's you go to an award thing and here is the award and somebody endowed it, right? So somebody was willing to give money towards it and they say it's because I want somebody to be chosen who does have financial need. You can't ignore that aspect. That's what somebody who gave the award, who wants that, you know, but we could maybe in a public forum approach it in a different way. But sometimes you are locked into how awards are given because of who decides. I mean, it's their money. They can decide how it's given. But I do agree you can figure out a way to approach it in the public forum so you're not calling somebody up in the middle of graduation or some other award ceremony. You can give the name of the award, but you don't have to give all the specifics of an award. I would be also interested in talking more about some of the academic achievement aspects. I don't know the best way to approach that, but what I would want to make sure we don't lose is the ability for our students to excel as much as possible. You know, and I'm not saying that anybody is saying get rid of AP classes or get rid of accelerated classes. I'm not saying that. And if there's a problem with how we're tracking, then yes, I think we should be identifying it and giving people the chance, as I understand. You know, you mentioned here, well, if you can't handle it, you can move back down. But I do know from experience that there are kids who don't originally start in what they call the advanced classes in middle school or high school. And because of their academic performance, where teachers and parents, they recommend, hey, you know what? You should consider doing this. You haven't been doing it, but you should consider doing it. I know kids who have moved up right? So I think these opportunities are very important for our students, but we need to make sure, of course, that we're doing it correctly and that we're giving as much opportunity as everybody as possible without throwing labels that become binding.
Thank you, Jim. And yeah, just to clarify the advanced class thing, I absolutely not advocating to get rid of it. It's just that concept that if I have a student in a Regents class, that is as valuable. What you're doing in that Regents class is as valuable as the student who's in the AP class. It's equal value because you're both achieving your best, and there isn't that one person is achieving more because they're there. It's just it's just the class that meets your needs the best. And I think if we work more towards that understanding, and that's how our delivery and that kind of a thing, then we're just being more conscious of how we're stratifying people. And I'm not so sure I'm even saying get rid of class rank. However, I'm looking, Pam, I know, has had graduates, Linda's had graduates. Your class rank, oh my land, it becomes so subjective. At the top, you're like talking 0.00 whatever, and you're kind of wondering where it comes from. And then you're like, okay, well, that person took 2 advanced music classes. So those are weighted classes. So that gives them an advantage. That I actually had, we had a valedictorian who told me she didn't take any electives because getting on 100 in an elective would actually bring her grade down. She had to keep them all the weighted grades. And that made me so sad because I'm thinking you're missing out on good educational opportunities then to keep your grade up. And but it was the way the system was working. So I just don't know if there's a way to rework that or not. These are just kind of like putting things out there that definitely stratify kids, potentially unnecessarily, I'm not sure, and very subjectively at times. Lisa or Pam, I'm not sure whoever's first. Lisa?
Yeah. Okay. So I just had 2 quick things. One is for when we continue this conversation, like back in the beginning of your slides, I think also what we need to have in there is that public education is a public good, right? Like this benefits all of us. And the thing about public goods is that you can't exclude people from them, right? But like and we've lost a lot of that, I think. But the second thing I wanted to say, and this also actually relates to something earlier that you said, I think that there is the potential of talking about like deficit thinking when you talk about people who may need a little bit extra to get whatever. And just a very quick story from the Great Depression that probably actually played out here as well. But during the Great Depression, because of the price of grain being so high and everyone's nutrition in this country like really took a nosedive, and people didn't have enough to eat and they weren't getting enough calories. And even if they weren't getting enough nutrition, except among immigrant communities, where you had people who were coming from very different kinds of cultural systems, where they were eating different things and knew how to stretch food and use different kinds of proteins and all of that. So, and you can see a marked difference in like caloric intake and nutritional value among like really poor immigrant communities versus wealthier people who just couldn't cook the way they previously had. So it's a story that I like to tell when we get into this like deficit kind of thinking. And it's also, feeds back to where like you can get like kind of like resilience and diversity and ideas. And I would imagine among all the immigrant communities here in Oswego, 90 years ago, it was playing out as well. Like they probably did pretty well here because they knew, how to stretch food and how to cook and, what they could grow.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Pam?
Thanks. That was great, Lisa. I just wanted to touch with you on the class rank. That drives those kids. So I that would be something I would hate to see come away, because those topplers, they're driven. They want that. They want to get that rank number. But yeah, the way it works, the design of it, like Heather was saying, oh, I can't take an elective because it's not weighted. That's got to be reworked, because yeah, that's so sad. They're missing out on some really awesome classes they would really probably love, but it won't do it because it's definitely going to affect their rank. So that whole system needs to be redesigned.
Thank you, Pam. Linda.
Wow. I believe your vision, what you've put together, is honorable. I think it's wonderful. It's all encompassing of many, many areas that are so large and so big. I'm not sure where there's certain things that I may not agree with you on. I know it's taken you a long time to put this PowerPoint together, but I see it as work that will be going on for quite a while. And as I said, it's all encompassing. So when you start, one's talking about sports, one's talking about grades, one's talking about the musical, one's talking about field trips. Yeah, the discussion has started, but I'm reluctant to just jump right in right now because I see this as a massive undertaking, and I think it needs to be, if in fact the board decides, we need to do narrow it down, maybe work on one or two areas with this vision, and then go from there. That's all I want to say.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Linda, very much. Honestly, this was all just to get the conversation started. The examples I gave are purely examples from my experience. I'm sure, and other people have kind of given examples from their experience. And the objective is definitely not to spend tonight fixing all of these things or even discussing all of these things. It's merely to get the conversation started. I don't even think that this is necessarily board work. This is, as Tom pointed out, this is community work. This is vision for strategic planning, and it's our administrative work. We have Dr. Kelvin's work. So it's more just about talking about, we're actually, Matt, do you mind going to the next slide? 'Cause I think, okay, well, let me get to the hands first. Were there hands before No. All right, because I'm going to get right to what you're saying. Linda, Tom, did you have something though? I feel like your hand was up.
Yeah, I did. I said it's more conceptual in the sense of if we were mindful of equity and the actions that we take, again, going back to the strategic planning, if it's a core belief, that we're mindful of it, then it's just the way we perceive things and how we would then act upon them. It wouldn't mean necessarily that we would try to change the structures, but we would go in and say, okay, we know there's not equity here. What can we do to adjust in this arena? And if it's just something, again, it has to go outside of just the district. We don't work in isolation. And we have to look at the community as a whole and how we interact with it. And it interacts with us because it moves both ways. So I think it's more of a conceptual thing and something that, again, in the strategic planning that we've been talking about core beliefs, if it's something we bring into our consciousness and our awareness and start to bring it to affect change within the programming and the actions that we take.
Yes. Thank you, Tom. Jim?
Yeah, so I'll just follow up on Tom and I are both on the strategic planning committee, and we've been working every Wednesday now for a few weeks, and I think we spent already 9 or 12 hours in this group, and we've done a lot of great work, and I'm really appreciative that Dr. Kelvin has put this group together. And we've come up with a mission, and we've come up with a vision, and we've come up with what our core beliefs are. And we're starting to work now on, where we want to set some metrics. And not surprisingly, we've really set all of our metrics so far based on academics and dropouts and attendance. And I think that, the group, and we're meeting again tomorrow, one of our missions and some of our core beliefs are based on diversity and equality and inclusion. And we haven't yet started talking about where that fits into some of our goals. Now, it's not the same as in attendance. You want a percentage. You want a percentage that graduates. You want certain star scores. Those are very measurable, which these are not as much. But I do think that as the strategic plans go through, we should also keep our eye on these things. And I'll be sure if Dr. Calvin or Tom don't bring it up first tomorrow, I will bring it up as well. Again, they're not as easily measurable, but they're not less important by any stretch of the imagination. And because the strategic plan is being developed by all the stakeholders and will come as a district policy and I believe will come in front of the board. I don't know whether from a formal ratification or not, what Dr. Calvin's plan is. He's shaking his head as possibly yes. All right. Whether it's official or not, it's something that we as a board should really be looking at and making sure that when we write our policies, that they're in accordance and fall in line with what this strategic plan is. So I think Dr. Calvin doing this right now is a very appropriate time to fit this into the discussion.
Thank you so much, Jim. I think I just have like 2 more slides. Matt? Okay. Just as kind of like the other side of the coin, common responses that I have received anyways, and maybe you all have received other ones, but just some ideas that are out there. One definite one is, why should my child have to sacrifice because another child, and I put it nicely, comes from a resource limited home? Why should my kid not get to go on the trip? Why should I not have that opportunity to go to the Galapagos Islands per se, just because someone else doesn't live in an area where they can fundraise? Why should we limit opportunity for some just because others can't afford the experience? Kind of the same thing. Why can't we do something additional for them and avoid limiting opportunity for those who have resources? I've heard this one in terms of the intramurals, which, Jim, I understand what you're saying, which is a lot different than what. So typically I've heard, give them an intramurals program while our children get to do the competitive program, where I'm thinking more like we're talking about, let's have intramural programs that build skills at a young age so that when they get to a 7th grade, they're all more competitive to go out for the team. There's definitely an us and them, that it's there, it's strong, and it's definitely pervasive in our school culture. This one I get, the answer is hard work, not giving more to some people. That's inequitable, I hear. They already get so many of the resources. So those are definitely things I've personally received in response to some of my, trying to push back on some of these things. And so I think that's just about talking more about it, about making this more a cultural change, if that's the direction we decide to go. Okay, thank you, Matt. All right, so this is where we're getting to where Linda was wanting to get, and I think Tom and Jim were talking about, and just this was the whole point, is just first awareness that this is definitely an issue, and it is kind of embedded in our culture and in our institutional practices. So we do need to kind of start peeling back the layers if it's something we, not just as a school board, but as a community, want to pursue. So awareness, getting the conversation started. The strategic plan obviously ties in. So obviously we want to utilize that process that is already in play. And then, this is just something I threw out if we need an additional committee. But honestly, if the strategic planning committee is probably enough, if they want to take the ball and run with it. But if we do need a deeper look as it pertains to our school district, that's certainly an option. And then obviously if there's specific policies that need to be changed, that's one of the pleasures of being on the board, and one of our privileges is we do have policy control. So there are things we can institute to make change if needed. But I think the goal is really to have it come from the inside out, so that, this is really something that comes from administration, staff, faculty, in our community. That would be ideal. So I think, Matt, if I'm correct, that's the end. Okay. I always have something more to say, I guess. Basically, we'll get the community we nurture inside the walls of our schools. I believe that. And so we really need to consider, what do we value most? What qualities do we want to reinforce in our students? Because those are the same qualities they're going to bring to the larger community. So if we want to instill, self-protectiveness and some of those other things, they'll bring those to the larger community. I personally would like to see inclusiveness, generosity, grace, all of those things, even if it means sacrifices. I have told my kids, step back so the other person can have, because to me, I'd rather see that instilled in them than getting whatever opportunity it was they were in line for. So I think that is my concluding thoughts. And so if anyone has anything additional to add before we move on, I really appreciate it.
Heather, you did a great job. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pam. Anyone else before we go? All right. Thank you so much, guys, for starting the conversation. I think it's exciting. I got to wake my computer back up so I can see where we're at here. I think we're going to be passing the consent agenda here. All right. Yes, moving on to the consent agenda. I'd like to lump the minutes of the regular board meeting for May 4th, the minutes of the regular board meeting April 20th, minutes of the budget workshop for April 13th, the claims auditor report for March and April, and the OMS classroom activities report and the special education report from May 18th together, unless anyone has objections. Could I get a motion?
I'll move it.
Thank you, Jim. A second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Tom. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, I guess, to Heidi.
Yep, good evening. We have our professional staff recommendations. I will group A through H. We have a professional staff recommendation, administrative, Judith Osetic. She is going to do another year as the assistant principal at the middle school under the grant designation and the funding that we have for that. B, also at OMS, a professional staff recommendation for Sherry Beck and literacy, again funded through our grant that we received from New York. C, 2 probationary appointments, Rodolfo Pena Barrios, foreign language at the middle school, and Claire Donovan, English at the middle school. D, extra compensatory for the high school, auditor, director of student activities, and treasurer as presented, as well as our class advisors in E. F, extra compensatory at the high school, the assistant marching band director, Heather Sweeting. G, an amendment to previously appointed JV boys lacrosse head and assistant coach. We were not able to field all 3 levels of those teams for lacrosse, and we ended up only having these 2 gentlemen work for the first 2 weeks of the season until the boys were separated into the levels that we have. And then H, OHS and OMS sports. These are the wrestling folks who are running that 6-week wrestling program. So A through H.
Okay, can I have a motion, please?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, Tom and Linda. Any discussion?
I did have a question. It's not directly related, but indirectly. Is Judith Osetic is going to the middle school. Nick Little had moved from FITCHU over to technical department, and they were both instrumental in the mindfulness program at FITCHU. Do we know if that is still being, because this kind of speaks exactly to equity and developing at that young age. Is that program still being carried on over there?
Yeah, absolutely. Carrie, do you want to speak to?
No, there are other people that also have part of the mindfulness program. Their school counselor is very much involved in the mindfulness program. So yes, they're still carrying on.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I just had one quick question. Like, all the extra comp positions, they get posted every time when they're coming up, right? They don't just people stay in them. They're reposted every year, correct?
Correct. Yep. Both extra comps K-12, they get put out at various times in the spring, usually in May and June. We'll see some come earlier than others because they have work that needs to be done either over the summer. So we are appointing the auditor, student activities director, and treasurer now so that they are appointed appropriately for their work that they have to still do over the summer, as well as some of the class advisors, also because of some of the fundraising work that they tend to do that overlaps in the summer before the kids are fully back in the fall. But I'll be bringing others forward as they come in.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and then our support staff recommendations. We have a group of leaves of absence, 2 teacher aides, a cook, and a school bus driver. J, 2 probationary appointments, Derek Demo, custodian here at Layton, and Tanya Motika, custodial worker at Fitzhugh Park. K, a provisional appointment, Yolanda White, senior custodian here at Layton, replacing those retirements that we had seen over the last couple of meetings. L, a support staff recommendation, permanent appointment, Joshua Bivens, custodian at Minetto, completed his probationary period. And then M, we just have a couple sub and temporary employee appointments.
Okay, can we have a motion?
I'll move it.
Thank you, Lisa. A second?
I'll second.
Tom, thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to Nancy.
Good evening. A, we have an amendment to our Express Scripts contract, and this is through Keenan Coalition. The additional savings to the plan, our health insurance plan, will be $164,739. B is our annual agreement with City BOCES for the sponsorship of the continuing adult education program. It's a self-sustaining program that BOCES operates for adults. C is a donation to Fitzhugh Park School from Exelon from their employee engagement program. There were 2 in the packet. One was for $70 and one was for $160, totaling $235. D is our annual contract with Anderson Center for Autism. We have 1 student potentially going there next year. E and F are both for Trinity School. This is our flow-through funding for Title I, and it is for remedial reading. The first one is to Rebecca Flack, not to exceed $750.50. And the second one is for Heather Haskins for $750.50, and both for Trinity. G and H are MOUs with OCO, and the first one is for their Youth Emergency Services, or YES program, and the second one is for their program to assist teenage homeless, or PATH. They will work with our McKinney-Vento liaison for additional support. And the last one is I, and it is our AIA contract with Adhand Piping Company for $2,696,500, and that is for the soil remediation program. So A through I.
Okay, can I have a motion first?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Tom. Second?
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. And then any discussion? No questions? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. All right. Our student is not here, unfortunately. I always look forward to hearing what she has to say. So, items from the board. I guess you guys have to wow us instead.
I just want to remind everyone it's election day. Polls close at 9.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lisa. All right, anything else?
Yeah, No, go ahead. Go ahead.
My bi-weekly shout out to our faculty, staff, administrators for all the hard work they're putting in for our district, for all our students.
Thank you, Pam. Tom?
I just wanted to say, because we've been doing the strategic planning part, it's been great for me. I mean, to be able to sit in that environment, even though it's a Zoom environment, to come in contact with everybody throughout the district at different levels, to see perceptions, to see the ideas, the creativity, but also just to get a respect for every facet of this. And I think it's invaluable just for more information for myself, and it would be for any board member at any time, because I think it's been, again, invaluable to hear different perspectives. And then I also want to say, Zayda's not here, because she's not here, I can say it. She's wonderful. And we've been so blessed with every student board member we've had over, the 3 years I've been here. But she offers such insight, whether it's here or in that strategic planning, and for youth. She speaks so well for our system and for herself, for everything. It's wonderful. And I just wanted to say how proud I am of her. So
Thank you, Tom.
that's it. I'm out.
Jim, did you have something? I feel like no. Linda, no. We all set? Okay. About the strategic plan, I was talking to Dr. Kelvin, and potentially we would like updates, because unfortunately, I think we all would love to be a part of it, but there's only 2 representatives on it. And, as elected representatives of the community, it's very important that we understand the vision coming from the strategic plan. So that would be fantastic if we could build that in somehow, like updates, I guess.
Sure. We can do that at our next meeting, Heather. Sure.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, well, if that's it, then we do need to make a motion to go into executive for the purposes of reviewing the performance of a particular personnel, in addition to litigation. Is there any other item, Dr. Calvin? Nope. Okay. Do I have a motion for that?
Move it.
Thank you, Jim. And a second?
I'll second.
No one wants to go in. Okay. Any discussion? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And there will not be a need for a vote afterwards. So, all right. Thank you, guys. Thank you,
Which
everyone.
one do we use?